Well, the first thing I did right was the day I started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on.
Summer of 2020, George Floyd is murdered while in police custody, and that set off a just firestorm of protest in response, calling for greater racial justice.
The Open Society Foundations made a pretty sizable investment in Black-led, Black movement organizations.
We also started having a conversation about what about individual leaders within the movement who may or may not be connected to a large organization, but who clearly can be called architects.
The crises that we face today in this world are just, unbelievably complex. No single experts or, no handful of experts have the answers. Those problems are so complex, we need the wisdom, we need to harness the wisdom of everyone. Every voice is important.
Movements are long and they're strategic and they're thoughtful and they take strategy to drive them forward. So it is a privilege to be a part of the group of people who are coming up with strategy, who can move the needle forward a little bit more and a little bit more.
It's people who drive movements, right? And so we have to think about the most effective ways to support those people.
To be part of movement is a lifetime commitment.
Being a leader in this space, it definitely requires a certain kind of constitution.
These awards, it's a small effort. We have to be thinking about how is it that we're sustaining people? How is it that we're recognizing the needs that they have to live their lives to be most effective in this work?
You cannot be an activist in secret. You're making sacrifices that other people are not ready to make, but you know what it means to be in community, and you are in community with someone. The rules are designed to maintain what is. And so if you're a change maker, you have to be willing to break the rules.
When we get the ball, lives will change. When we get the ball, liberation is ours. Do y'all feel what I'm saying, good people?
The idea of Black children like my son living in a world where, yes, his basic needs are met and he doesn't have to fear for being killed by police officers or by anybody.
The work that they're doing today, we may not see the fruit of it for 20, maybe even 40 years. So we're just meeting the movement at one moment in the movement and doing the best that we can.
The role of power, real power, is restoring the dignity of the people. So when we're talking about Black folks who may feel displaced and are displaced because of the history of this nation, if we learn how to love each other in this nation, and how to practice democracy together, this becomes our home.
And why I help to get Black people free because I love them.
I'm just on fire for the work because it's like, I can't believe that I get to do this every single day.
We must fight for freedom. We must fight for freedom. We must fight for justice. We must fight for justice.
Yes. How beautiful. Oh, my spirit is absolutely alive. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this evening's celebration. Welcome to the Open Society Foundation's Justice Rising Awards. This is an event that celebrates 16 individuals who individually and collectively represent so much of what is beautiful and galvanizing the movement for Black liberation and justice. My name is Heather McGee, and I am an author, a mother, an educator, a strategist designing solutions to inequality in this country. And I'm also the chair of the Board of Color of Change and on the advisory board for the Open Society Foundations US, an organization that, as we all know, does more than most in the world of philanthropy to support the efforts to advance equity, fairness, and justice in the United States. I have to say personally that one of the highlights of my post-organizational period of my life after I left running Demos has been as a board member making phone calls with Tom Perriello to a whole host of extraordinary organizational leaders and telling them that a massive And for most of these organizations, unprecedented gift was going to be in their bank accounts within the year in order to fuel the work. That's the kind of respect and esteem that the Black leaders who are being awarded tonight and the organizations in the ecosystem that is building power for democracy in America, that's the esteem in which that whole movement is held within the walls of Open Society Foundation. So it's an honor. It was an obvious yes when the leadership asked me to MC this event, because I wanted to get right. That video helped me get right. And also because we're going to hear from leaders at OSF about why they decided that now was the time for these awards, how it lends itself to the organization's mission, and most importantly, from the awardees themselves on what freedom looks like to them now, how their perseverance in this space has proven to be so critical to the overall ecosystem. So please join me now in welcoming my dear friend, Tom Perriello, the Executive Director of Open Society US.
Thank you, Heather. I'm going to do my thank yous up top because I don't want the Oscar music to play me off too early. I want to thank you, Heather, for your leadership. I want to thank, most of all, the inaugural class of Justice Rising award winners. And we want it to be an inaugural class because we want to tell the stories of your amazing work and why we don't do enough to support the leaders who are on the front line. So I want to thank all of you for restoring our sense of hope, for expanding our sense of what's possible. And I want to say more about that in a second. But I also want to thank the friends and family members of our award winners, because we know how much y'all did to make sure that these incredible people were out there able to lead and having their back on this and just being proud of them. So we're happy for that. And I want to say a thank you to the institution, not just George and Alex Soros for their leadership on this, Heather McGee and others on the board, but certainly Reverend Huffman and Adam Culbreth for their incredible work. It really has been a team effort. And the second thing I want to say is help answer the question, why? Nothing tells me more about your leadership than the fact that the number one question you all asked us as soon as we offered the gifts was, why not this other person? Why not this amazing person in the trenches, this other person who's more worthy? We want to feed that. We want to make sure you understand just how worthy you are of this celebration, of this investment. And if anything, we want to make sure other philanthropies follow the lead. We have way too many movement leaders who people see on TV and they assume that they're making bank or whatever, and they can't even make their bill payments that month. So we need to get out of a mentality of scarcity. And those of us who've been in philanthropy with a horrible history of discrimination, but also some moments of inspiration of how we make sure that we do more to support leaders like you, because you guys aren't just helping the most marginalized. You are helping all of us believe again in a cynical time, a time of shrinking imagination that we can believe. And that's the last thing I want to say. I'm actually in London tonight. It's tonight my time. Because I got to meet today with the heads of our Africa unit, our Latin America unit, our Asia unit, Europe unit. Every single one of them knew about these awards, and they were like, this means so much to people in our country. Like Pitbull, y'all are worldwide. I mean, they are saying to the Afro-Cubans, to people sitting there in Brazil who are taking inspiration from the movement for Black Lives, from this global movement for Black liberation and justice. And our foundation has the benefit of working globally for marginalized communities, trying to empower marginalized communities. So just know that that influence, that ripple you guys feel in your community, it's being felt all over the country, and it's literally being felt all over the world. We have rarely seen something in our global network that has inspired people as much as your stories and your work. And the last thing I just want to say is, we really appreciate the work you've done. And if you want to know where these awards came from, it came from your peers. We went out and talked to BIPOC leaders, particularly Black leaders in the justice movements. And we said, what are the things that philanthropy is not doing? And the two things we heard most often were multi-year general operating grants to give people, institutions, a chance to dream, a chance to fail, a chance to succeed. And that's where the 5-year grants came from that Heather mentioned. And the second was, we need to support our leaders better. Our leaders are being torn down. They're carrying so much weight. So many of you have talked about being able to pay your bills for the first time, maybe take your first vacation in 4 years. These were two things we heard from your peers who wanted you to be celebrated. They wanted you to feel that love from across the movement. So, Heather, thank you so much for emceeing tonight. Thank you to Adam and Tara and George and Alex and everyone who's been part of this. But most of all, thank you all for devoting your life to creating this more free, liberated, and just world. Thank you.
My name is Adam Culbreth, and I'm with the Open Society Foundations.
And my name is Tara Huffman. I am formerly with Open Society Foundations and currently a consultant with organizations across the U.S. advancing racial justice and equity.
As Thomas said, Tara and I have had the distinct honor and privilege, along with other colleagues at Open Society US, of helping to launch this first iteration of the Open Society Justice Rising Awards. What we knew and what we continued to see again and again throughout this effort within Open Society is that the struggle for Black liberation and justice is, as many have said, a leaderful one with passion, commitment, savvy, brilliance, and beauty found in every corner of the movements in our midst. So it's with great humility and respect that we join you today to honor and celebrate 16 people who represent, in our minds, some of the best of what the movement for racial justice has, can, and should look like. 16 people who, despite their many differences, are joined together on a historical continuum and who are bound together and who sit in community with so many others in a way that points to a future of great possibility.
These 16 leaders, we suspect, would be the first to say that there are others, many others, who have inspired them, co-labored with them, held them up, shown them the way, and who need recognition and support and acknowledgement as well. And we agree. So our hope is that these awards and these awardees in all of their accomplishments, their struggles, and their audacious dreams help to elevate the collective work of racial justice and the communities of which they are all a part. All of the people who in so many ways are giving so much, risking so much, achieving so much, sacrificing so much to create or help create the future that we all want to see.
We also hope our recognition of these 16 trailblazers and visionaries prompts philanthropy and others to ask the question, how can we honorably celebrate one another in this work? Not just the wins or the victories, but the people who are giving their lives to what we know is a lifetime of work. So while our next speaker couldn't be with us in person, she has prioritized time from the front lines of her voting rights justice work to send us this video in celebration of our awardees. Thank you, Stacey Abrams, tireless contributions to amplifying the work of others. Over to the video from Stacey.
Congratulations to the Justice Rising awardees. Each of you has given so much of yourself, of your talent, of your time to the work of justice, to the work of ensuring that communities that are too often unseen and unheard not only have a place at the table, but have the skills to build the table themselves if they need to. Thank you so much for all that you have done and will continue to do. And my gratitude and the gratitude of so many to the Open Society Foundations for your continued investment, not only in justice, but in those who make justice work. Because we know that it is not enough to say we believe. We have to have the support to make belief a reality. As we head into a new year, we are always called upon to think about what has been, and unfortunately or fortunately, what is to come. We know that this has been a year that has been fraught with heartache, with disappointment. But it has also been a year worthy of celebration, worthy of acknowledging our successes. In fact, if we think about the last 2 years, the last 4 years, the transformational work that has been done by the organizations and the individuals being acknowledged here is worthy of celebration. But as we celebrate, we also have to contemplate what is to come. We know that in 2022, the challenges will only multiply, that the barriers that we have worked so hard to take down will grow even higher, even stronger, even more impenetrable. But so will our will. So will our inspiration, and so will our courage. We should head into 22 with the same zeal, the same faith, and the same fortitude that has pushed each of you through these past few years, and for so many through a lifetime of challenges. And what you have proven is that these challenges are never big enough to defeat you. And what you've shown to so many is that those challenges are not big enough to defeat them. I want to leave you with one call to action. And that is that we must consistently learn our lessons, not our losses. And what I mean is that we have to be insistent upon knowing what we did right, knowing what we did wrong, and knowing the difference. But we cannot wallow in the mistakes made. We have to make those mistakes pathways to a future that is stronger and brighter for all. We must see ourselves as explorers, exploring the opportunities and sometimes sending signals back that a new way is possible. We must also see that the lessons learned are lessons that hold us up, that lift us up. They do not anchor us down. It is easy to get caught in loss. It is easy to stay there because it's comfortable and familiar. But the lesson must be that perseverance, that persistence, and that progress is our responsibility. And more importantly, it's our right. But I'm preaching to a choir who understands that justice is constantly and inevitably on the rise as long as you do your work. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stacy. To echo her words, her own words, perseverance, persistence, and progress is our responsibility and our fight, and justice is on the rise. It's now time to introduce the first group of 4 more distinguished honorees. These individuals, with their support, of course, of their communities, colleagues, and comrades, many of whom have joined them on this call this evening, are creating change and building power for Black people and our allies. Let's watch.
Deborah Small and Makani Themba, it's so wonderful to have you here with us today. It's a great honor and privilege. And I wanted to start by asking you a really important question in this moment. In these times of apparent retrenchment and attack, what's the responsibility of media and media makers?
Adam, I think that's a great question, and I want to say I'm really grateful to be here as well. Thank you. And really grateful to be here with my sister and a person I've long admired, Deborah Smalls, Yay. Thank you for that. You know, it's so interesting. I know there's a lot of folks in our movement who feel, you know, a lot of whiplash between 2020 and this moment, right? You know, there were millions of us in the streets, and ever since that moment, there have been folks really gunning for the movement. So I think it's going to be very important for media to, you know, do the research, look at all of the angles, and understand the the motives, right, behind some of the folks who are writing the stories, who are saying what they're saying. And that I really miss investigative reporting, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm all about like accountability, all the things that I think are important to strong movements. And then a lot of times with the media, they're not asking, well, who are the people who are making these allegations and what are their interests? And it's like there's not a lot of story about that. So I think that's a responsibility for whoever you're doing the work around to sort of look at, like, where do they sit in the larger landscape? How is power playing out? And I think the other thing is history, that a lot of times when folks cover the movement, they're not looking at the historical arc. They're looking at a snapshot in time. So, there's a lot of story about, like, well, resources and resources in the context of what and what history. How do the resources that folks are talking about that our movement has, in light of, say, the kind of infrastructure and resources that other movements like big green organizations that are taking on, of course, important issues as well. So a lot of times I don't think the media is looking at the comparison. They're sort of rooted in some tropes about, like, whether or not Black people deserve money or whether or not our organizations have too much. When we're here fighting racism, right? We're fighting a 500 more than that year old problem with and been under resourced for centuries. And even now, the amount of money that we're talking about is less than the annual budget for some, large, important organizations that no one questions their work. So I'm hoping that media can have that historical view, can look at the context in which, many of the questions and issues are being asked, as well as, yes, look at the issues of accountability, look at the work that we're doing. And I think that also look at, like, is the scrutiny that folks are engaging in about the old tropes, the old racist tropes, or are they about a broader understanding that's grounded in the context and politics and history of our movement?
Yes. And Deborah, would you like to add to that?
So first, I just want to say that it's wonderful to be able to participate in this historic event of honoring so many leaders of people who have been toiling for years and years, working on issues of racial justice, social justice, reproductive rights, often without acknowledgement and minimal media attention. And so I'm happy to be here talking with you, Adam, and having this conversation with my sister Makani, who's been one of those people who has nurtured the development of movements. People don't recognize how important it is to have people who will support your ideas and help you get the resources you need to take them from an idea into something real. And that's the role that Makani has played for me and so many other people. And it's one of the reasons we call her our queen goddess. So I'm happy to be having this conversation with her today. And for me, the biggest challenge around media is the impact of the commercialization of media. I'm old enough to remember where media wasn't considered to be one of those areas that was supposed to be driven by profit, that it wasn't about entertaining people. It was actually about providing real information. And I've watched over the course of my life, particularly my life as an activist, how much that has changed and how much the lines have been blurred between fact-based journalism and opinion journalism. Many people, what they hear most of the time are people's opinions about what's happening in the world, but not the specific facts. And so it's really difficult to educate the public honestly about issues when they're unable increasingly to be able to distinguish between opinions and facts. And because the media is so commercially driven and focused on profit making, it reinforces the tendency to want to generate conflict, because conflict helps produce more profits. And so even when it's theoretically trying to be supportive of a movement, it almost always will resort to finding ways to pose issues as being in conflict with each other. And that means not always focusing on what it is that activists are for, but to frame it as who or what they're against. And we see that specifically in issues around criminal justice reform and policing. You know, the majority of the people who work on these issues are working on them because they're for reinvesting in communities. They're for providing human services that people need, that have been squeezed out and starved for decades of misappropriation of money that's favored law enforcement and control over providing people support and help. And yet the media repeatedly will grab onto slogans that allow them to frame the issues in a way that will generate more conflict, that will promote opposition. You know, I was blessed to be one of the students of Derek Bell, one of the founders of what's now called critical race theory. That's not what he called it at the time. And the idea that it's being framed in a way that's about, you know, promoting conflict between races or designed to make white people feel guilty, that was not the point. That was not the point. It was about bringing a whole nother level of inquiry and history to the way that we approach the law and public policy. And I'm grateful for that training. And the media knows this because they know who these people are. They should have read their writings, but it's easier to continue to frame issues in ways that will generate more conflict because it's good for ratings. It's good for selling. It's good for getting clicks. And so for me, that is both disappointing, but also I think dangerous, because it's true that you need to have an informed and educated public in order to have a vibrant democracy. And ultimately, our work is about expanding and improving democracy. And it's very difficult to do that when you're in a media environment that's undermining it at every turn.
To put some respect on my vote. We had people die on the battlefield so we can vote.
Congratulations to those honorees. You know, poetry has been a tool of the Black justice struggle, a tool of resistance, of hope, and an integral part of the freedom and liberation movement, all the way back to our first recognized poet from our people, Phillis Wheatley. We thank poet and writer Aja Monet, for her contribution to the celebration of the Justice Rising awardees with her reading of a beautiful poem that I can't wait to hear done live, Injustice. Over to Aja.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aja Monet, and I am grateful to be with you all virtually here today. I would like to wish a congratulations to those, the recipients of the Justice Rising Awards. And I'm going to read a poem called Injustice, which is after a poem by Audre Lorde called Power. So if you read that poem, there a lot more will make sense, but here it is. Howling in the wound of words, a tongue trembles with the tension of truth. The difference between poetry and rhetoric is there's a world outside your door, knocking inward, a voice hungers fearless, wooed by courage, a deliberate impulse, the ability to turn a knob, alter or shift action. A window is a mirror of risk. A poet writes to balance the scales of power, yet feels the absence of power, perhaps instead of rape. I ought to say, he forced a sweating throb, liquored moans, mangled morning, a roofy stone turned me inside out, studded, wet, worn too tight, busted, bruised, came and went. I was a ghost, a rage no one can see. I killed myself a little to enter the memory so close. I choose not to resurrect the devil in details, and the country still a culture of take or be taken violently. The United States is a forced entry on stolen land. The Supreme Court weaponizes words against flesh. Law is made still. A poem is not a knife or gun or food unless the knife or gun is a pen or clothes. A pen is only a sword of feelings, not a home, not louder than a bomb, is not flesh or blood, not a condom or pill, cannot unrape you nor undo your doing. Yet a poem is a doing still, warbling within an ear, eye, mouth, or touch, a living beneath words. How we respond to power reveals our power, more or less, a flex or relinquish, tug, push, pull, demand or plead, a wrist dancing between fist and open palm, to kill or be sacrificed. Murder is murder. I aborted the child. It did not leave me like a dove or bittersweet farewell. I sucked the life I did not want away. The proof is in the pudding I cannot swallow. A poet writes to balance the scales. Any child that dies cannot undie in a poem, nor can a jury undie our children. There are no words to heal or bring back the dead. Remember, you cannot unkill a part of yourself with dreams or kisses, poetry or rhetoric, awards, accolades, pensions, money or comfort, marches or protests, judges or prisons. Losing a child is a suicide. The whole world silent, a voice lost in the difference between killing yourself and killing yourself, love and death. What we resist will amend or slaughter us. There will be others, and there were others. What say Audre Lorde to Margaret Garner of Power? The difference between poetry or rhetoric is a choice between lesser evils. Whether killing your children is killing yourself, whether you kill yourself or your children, a final word singing from a grave, shifted by the missing, maddened by the whole. Power is in the wave that moves. The way change is God, so is spirit or soul, see-through or like love. The more you control, the more it controls you. The difference between poetry and rhetoric is Darin Tator. Because a poem is not a knife or gun or bomb, yet a poem can so enrage a nation to imprison a poet who attempts to balance the scales, agitates a people power to do change when a foot is on your neck. It does not matter how you get it off, what words you say, what weapons you use, knife or pen, so long as you do is survival. And it becomes less and less important what someone thinks about how you resist, unless, of course, they are willing to take the foot off your neck, too. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aja, for your beautiful words and your passion, and for bringing the great Audre Lorde into the room. So many lines from that will stay with me. A poet writes to balance the scales. Thank you. Speaking of balancing scales, I'm really happy to be able to introduce someone I've gotten to know over the past few years as I've been serving on the advisory board, someone I'm very proud to have been in the room with as big decisions, tough decisions were made that have made an enormous difference in the world of philanthropy and, of course, in the world of the ecosystem, which we help to support. That's Deputy Chair of the Open Society Foundation's Alex Soros. Alex?
I want to extend my heartfelt congratulations to the 16 incredible leaders being honored today. As many of you know, racial justice has been central to the work and mission of the Open Society Foundations since its inception. My father began his philanthropic work by funding scholarships for Black university students in South Africa during apartheid. The foundation also began work early on to reform drug policies that unfairly target Black Americans in the Black community. In the years since, we've greatly expanded our investments in reforming systemic racism in our schools, criminal justice systems, and at the ballot box. In the wake of George Floyd's brutal murder in 2020, we went further still, committing $220 million to help build power in Black communities and promote bold policy changes across the country. Much of this support has gone to key organizations in the field, but we know and have long believed that it is the leadership of individuals like the 16 being honored today who build the movements that are making meaningful change. We know the sacrifices you have made, the mountains you have climbed, and the incredible drive and determination that blaze new trails for others to follow. Thank you.
We're now headed, thank you, Alex. We're now headed to Ohio to hear from awardee Prentice Haney, veteran community organizer and co-executive director of the Ohio Organizing Collaborative, which of course we know builds grassroots voter engagement and leadership programs for Black communities in Ohio. Welcome, Prentice.
Thank you, Heather. I'm sitting here just so full from the poetry, from Stacy, from all the amazing work that what comes to mind as I sit here and just take in on the celebration is 2017. 2017, I traveled to Howick Natal in South Africa, down a winding road to a location where young Nelson Mandela lost his physical freedom for 27 years. And as I stood in the spot that he knew that he would be taken away, it was a moment that I felt for the first time in my life what it actually meant to make a sacrifice for freedom, a sacrifice for liberation and for our people. The second time that I feel that is in the presence of these 16 amazing, powerful Black leaders in this country. Aja said in the poem that it's just sitting in my heart that poetry rebalances the scales. And I would add that regular people like me and you also balance the scales. When we decide to stand up in our agency, in our power, and say that we will fight for our communities, we do that. And so thankful that we are celebrating the sacrifice, because sacrifice doesn't have to come without celebration. And like Lucille would say, won't you celebrate with us? Thank you for coming and celebrating with these beautiful, amazing folks who have sacrificed so much and have so much joy and so much fight to go. And now I am going to pass it over to our third group of friends and peers who we're going to continue to celebrate.
Monica Simpson, it's so wonderful that you're here with us. Congratulations on being one of the inaugural awardees of the Justice Rising Award. It's such an honor and a privilege to have a few moments to engage in a conversation with you. And I'd love to start with something big about the work that you do. If you could talk about the greatest challenge that you're facing in the work, the greatest challenge that you and your colleagues and others engaged in this work are facing right now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adam. It really is awesome to be sharing this space with you. And thank you so much again. It really is an honor to be a part of this amazing class of folks. And every day I think I just am reminded of just how beautiful this experience is, and also just how much it means to me to be along with so many of my amazing colleagues. But the biggest challenge, honestly, I've been thinking about this a lot because, we're always faced with so much, right? We're on the defense so much in our work, in particular as it pertains to our sexual and reproductive health rights and justice in this country. And as we look at yet another abortion-centered case going before the Supreme Court, as we look at the fact that maternal mortality rates are still something that we're contending with as the United States of America, as I think about the fact that we are still in a country that has yet to make comprehensive sex education something that is available to our young people for them to be able to grow up and make their best decisions about their bodies and their reproductive lives. I think the biggest threat is just that our human right to be able to self determine, our human right to be able to control our own bodies and to determine our futures is the biggest threat to our work right now. And when I think about the ways in which white supremacy, patriarchy, misogynoir, all these things play into our ability to be able to have the services that we need, to have the resources that we need, to have the health care that we need. It all comes together for me. And I think that's the biggest threat that we're up against right now is our inability to be able to make our own decisions about our bodies and our futures in this country. And that to me is a very scary place to be in right now.
And Monica, having to engage in the work and hold all of what you described, so how do you kind of regain or gain your energy and the energy to continue to move forward?
I think one of the things that's really important to me, I started this work, not as a leader or a person speaking about this work, but I started as an organizer. And when I think about the power of grassroots organizing and how I see so many folks are getting really excited about the work, they're stepping to the work because they're starting to see themselves more reflected in the work is absolutely energizing to me. And I think that grassroots organizing has to be what we continue to invest in, what we have to continue to give energy to, because that is what is really driving people to this work and to give us the collective power that we need to see the policy changes, the institutional changes, all the changes that we need in this country to be able to live the liberated lives that we all deserve. And I also have to just, as a creative myself, right? I am an artist and I come to my leadership from a very creative place. And I think about the power of culture shift and I think about the power of culture work and cultural workers, what we are doing right now. It is very exciting to see so many artists across so many different mediums using their art, using their creativity to really reflect the times. I live by the Nina Simone quote, it is an artist's duty to reflect the times. And I am seeing that really show up so much in movement work in very powerful ways. And that continues to also give me energy because whenever you're constantly faced, with being on the defensive position, right, it can get tiring over here, but to see the creativity coming out of so many different places all across this country, to see folks getting so activated and so engaged in the work because there is this strong grassroots organizing game going on, it just continues to give me the energy to keep this work going.
Yes, yes. And so you are in a place now, but you travel the country. And when people come to you and say, well, where should I be going? Where should I be devoting my energy? Who can I connect to? What can I become a part of in this struggle? I mean, what are some words of advice that you pass along?
My first word of advice, I guess, the first thing I would say is always to get connected to the people in your local community. I think that sometimes when we see the larger movements, we see the larger initiatives going on, there's a lot of energy that wants to go there. And we want to continue that, right? Like that's important for movement building work. But it's also equally important for us to be directly connected to those organizations that are moving work right in our backyard. So I'm always encouraging people to get to know the people in your state who are in your city who are doing the work. Like, how can you support? How can you volunteer? How can you amplify that work? That is so critical to movement building. We can't always start at the top. We have to make sure that we're starting right where we are to build that momentum up. And when I think about right now, what is most important as we see what's happening around sexual and reproductive justice issues in this country, I have to lift up our independent abortion clinics right now. They are working tirelessly to ensure that folks have access to the abortion care that they need and the health care that they need. And so if you are in a place where there are independent abortion clinics, make sure that you're supporting them. There's also amazing abortion funds all across this country that's making sure that people are able to get money, they're able to get rides, they're able to get practical support, as they are getting their procedures done. And so that's also important that we lift up our abortion funds right now, because we are absolutely in the fight of our lives as it pertains to Roe v. Wade, which we know, especially as folks of color, has always been the floor for us, but we don't need to be in a world where there aren't any protections, right? And we know that we're fighting at the state level all the way to the federal level to ensure that those protections stay in place. But supporting those abortion clinics, those in particular, those independent abortion clinics, and supporting those abortion funds, it's so crucial right now. So I always have to lift them up and make sure that folks are investing their money, their resources, their time in supporting those efforts, in particular around the work that is directly connected to what I do for reproductive justice. And lastly, I always tell people too that our artists are experts at culture shift work. They are folks who are ready to be used, right, to really move messages to help shift the culture. And so are you investing in your artists? Are you trying to figure out who these artists are, and not just bringing them into your events or bringing them into your organizations to come read a poem, which is amazing, do that. But it's like, how are you engaging them in like actual organizing and helping them to really be a part of the work that you're doing in your strategy development? That is so critical and important right now. And so those are just like 3 things I would throw out there to people, who are looking to find ways to get connected, to support, and to help us amplify what's happening right now. Because it's just time. This is the time for us all to be deeply rooted in what it is that we are really committed to. Because the work that we do for reproductive justice is liberation centered, and that requires all of us working together and bringing all of our gifts to the center in order for us to see that.
Mm-hmm. So, Monica, we've only had a short amount of time right now to hear from you, but you've given us so much with your words. But more importantly, thank you so much for your work, the work that you've done and the work that is going to continue. Wanted to give you an opportunity to offer us any kind of final words before we move on.
I've been singing this song all across the country anytime I have an opportunity, and I won't sing it today, but I will say the words. And the words are, we must fight for freedom. We must fight for justice. It will take all of us to get to the other side. And I wrote this chant as a way to remind people that when I say the other side, I am definitely talking about the other side of what we have been seeing in this country, and the other side is where liberation is for us. And so it's going to take all of us. And when I say all of us, I do mean all of us doing what it is that we know that we can do, putting ourselves out there to just really take ourselves to this next level. And so I'm really excited again about the momentum that's building around all of these issues that the Open Society Foundation has been able to lift up with this particular award. And I'm really excited about what that's going to do for our collective power. So I'm ready to be in this work with all of you and to continue to be in this work. And I'm excited to be on the other side with everybody as well.
Monica, thank you.
Thank you so much, Adam.
I am delighted to invite awardee Maurice Mitchell, the National Director of the Working Families Party, to say a few words. Maurice is Island, New York. Maurice?
Thank you, Tara, and thank you everybody who's come and assembled here to honor this work. So all of us 16 awardees and all the organizers and comrades we hold as chosen family, we engage in this work and take on what I could only describe as a sacred trust with no designs on recompense or recognition. So naturally, we meet both of these things with some discomfort. What's true is that this award and any recognition that we collectively or individually glean from it will not change the work. It will not imbue in the work any more meaning or value, because the work is not ours. There is an intrinsic value to the work. The work, like I said before, is a sacred trust. The work is a meditation on Black love and resilience. The work is a continuation of a legacy and commitment that is the product of many generations and many struggles. We are stewards of that work. We are holders of that legacy. We and our contribution are there to honor our ancestors as well as future generations by keeping that commitment. This award and any individual or collective recognition we gain is both an encouragement and presents with us a challenge to honor the people, the organizers, the struggles that have contributed to and collaborated on the projects we're all connected to. We are grounded in this understanding that there are no individuals that can own or take credit for a movement. So we don't sit here, the 16 of us, to give safe harbor to that delusion. Movements are the will of a people set against the historical circumstances they find themselves in. So we humbly stand only as representatives of that truth, not exemplars or exceptional. Rather, we bear witness to the genius, to the joy, and creativity of the masses of Black people. Awardees here span generations, sectors of the struggle, experiences, and contexts. The thing that binds us and propels us is the same thing that propelled a still nursing mother to resist enslavement, or a young person in St. Louis to leave their service sector job and hit the protest line, or a grandmother to shelter a freedom rider, or a Black political prisoner to write poetry from behind enemy lines, or storm refugee in the Gulf South to articulate the clearest critique of disaster capitalism. So my hope for my fellow awardees is that this award earns you more space to deepen kindness to yourself and others, to value not simply your ability to produce, but honor your breath, your rest, your joy, and that of your community. For other institutions, I want to agitate you to follow the lead of OSF and liberate your resources in ways that demonstrate your trust and respect for our leaders. And for any individual listening, make this an invitation to join this beautiful journey. There's room for you as well. We are special, but we are not unique. There are millions waiting in the wings and millions more who hopefully will not wait for permission. Joining the freedom side is not about winning or losing. It's ultimately about choosing who your people are in moments that require a clear moral choice and deciding what future generations will write about us. Thank you.
Gotta put some respect on my vote. We had people die on the battlefield so we can vote.
As our event comes closer to the end, I invite you all to visit our website, opensocietyjusticerising.org, to learn more about each awardee and their work with dedicated short films of each individual. I'd like to take my own personal minute to thank and honor our 16 awardees whose work inspires me every day, to embrace their peers in this space who stand by their sides, who are collectively the leaders of Black liberation, on whose shoulders we stand, and to acknowledge the younger generations that are breaking barriers behind us already. We're holding tight to this momentum and change from all of these directions. And with so many elections underway, there is no time like the present to close the evening with words from awardee Latasha Brown, co-founder of the Black Voters Matter Fund and the Black Voters Matter Capacity Building Institute. Latasha, please take it from here.
Thank you. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in the grave and go home, Lord. And before
wanted to start in the spirit of that because that resilience and that commitment to resistance that literally has been the undergirding of the Black liberation movement. And so, brothers and sisters, I'm so happy to be in community with you. That at the end of the day, strategy, while it is important, it has been the spirit of the movement. It has been us building each other and lifting each other up. You know, I think about Tarana, you know, as a sister, as somebody who I've worked with a long time, that you so love Black girls, that you helped create a space that grew out of that, a movement that has actually inspired the entire world. Makani, sister, you have never said no. You said yes when all we could give you was maybe a chicken box and a ride back home, that you have been a peacemaker to our movement and set the spirit of what we can do in the spirit of love. Brother Desmond, here it is that we're seeing you walk in the fullness where you transform your pain into possibilities. At the end of the day, we are watching you, not only your restoration, but we're watching how you've literally been elevated and been able to open the way for millions of others. My sister Monica, holding space for Black women's bodies, for Black women's spirit. Thank you, and always having a space that you were willing to say yes. My sister Colette, that I remember in Hurricane Katrina, when you came down and for months, for years, you lived in a FEMA trailer so that you could service and you could take care of our people that were impacted by Katrina, and then the oil spill, the immigrant community, and continue in that work. I can go on and on and on about each of you all. Robert, at the end of the day, you all, we've created this moment. While I'm so grateful for OSF for providing this opportunity, the truth of the matter, Black activists have created this space for Black liberation and actually be put to the forefront. That in the spirit of our ancestors, the spirit of all of those that actually believed and saw this moment, like this moment that we're being in, that we know that literally this discomfort that we're leaning in, it is because we are tearing down the structures of white supremacy. And so in this space, while many of us have dedicated our lives to fighting for Black liberation, I also want to remind ourselves, and to remind the world that what we are also teaching the world is what living a Black liberated life looks like. That we stand in that space, that we are literally an example of liberation when we go up against systems and we say no, that we are literally living a liberation when we have the audacity to have Black joy in a space that literally everything around us is trying to make us feel like we are marginalized and that our voices don't matter. That we are literally living a space and demonstrating what it looks like to live a Black liberated life when we're able to take care of ourselves, our family, our entire communities. That we are mothers, that we are lovers, that we are children, that we are daughters and sons and uncles and aunts. So I just want to say, out of everything, I am so deeply honored. I am literally pulling back tears right now. I am so deeply honored to be in this space with you all right now. That I want us just to remind us that liberation ain't a destination. We have to remind ourselves and others that liberation is a decision. And you all have decided that we're going to use our gifts to open up a space, our people to rise harder, that for open up a space that we're literally going to kind of create the world that we desire and that we deserve. Thank you. Thank you for being the freedom fighters. Thank you for feeding, right, me and many, many others. Thank you for being an inspiration to open up the space that we can literally create a movement that is rooted in love and power. Peace and blessings, brothers and sisters. Thank you. I'm so honored.
Hi, I'm Gary Hines, music director of the 3-time Grammy Award-winning Sounds of Blackness. For the past 50 years, we have been bringing the music of the African American experience to people all over the world, not only with education and resistance, but healing. On behalf of Sounds of Blackness, we are honored to play a role in celebrating the Justice Rising Awards, understanding that the awardees are part of an ecosystem of folks creating conditions for Black liberation and radical love. In return, we send you love and optimism, and we hope that this performance wraps that optimism all around each and every one of you.